Trustees. It is Tuesday, September 7th, 2021. If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you very much. Kelly, would you let the record show that we are all present? I'd like to move on to the approval of the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Support. I have a motion and support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're going to move on to announcements and communications. I do have one announcement for everyone in the audience. Our bathrooms are closed. So we do have a unisex bathroom. If you go back to the back and you go through the door next to the lobby, there's a bathroom there if you need it. But the two bathrooms are being renovated and we couldn't quite get them done for tonight's meeting, so I apologize. And we do have to approve the agenda.
Just reminding you.
Anyone have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda.
I'll support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now we'll move on to the announcements. Anyone else have anything they'd like to communicate? No? Okay, then we're going to move on to call to the public. And this is where anyone can step up to the microphone and talk about things that aren't agenda related. We'd like to keep them with 2 minutes, please, if it's possible.
Okay, I guess that's call to public. That's what I heard it was called.
Yep.
Hi, I didn't know it was coming up this quick. I was supposed to come up here.
Sure.
I was going to read my email, so I sent you guys an email the other day.
Could you please
after
give
talking.
your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Eva Fink. I actually live in Green Oak Township, just west, about 1.5 miles west of Irwin's Orchards, and just east of Kensington. There's 44 homes in our subdivision, and I sent an email because I was concerned about the new subs going in.
This is on our agenda tonight, and actually the call is for non-agenda related.
Oh, I didn't know that. Sorry.
That's okay. Oh, that's okay.
But,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, so should I just continue or no, and wait till
Let's
later?
just wait, and we'll give an opportunity once we talk through the process.
Okay, so this is a call for
Call to public is
non-agenda?
For non-agenda related items. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It was the thunder, I couldn't.
I know. I got to yell a little bit more in the microphone, I guess. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Can everyone hear me, or can you hear me? Can you, is there a way you can turn that up, Rob?
Maybe yours is just unplugged.
Is it
Test.
any better? Can you hear any better?
Yeah, a little better.
A little bit better? I'll try to talk closer to the microphone. I apologize for that. Okay, anyone else who would like to come up to the podium and talk about anything non-agenda related? Okay. All right, seeing no one, we're going to move on to reports. And the DDA position is still open. That I have nothing to report on. We are working with a recruiter to try to get a DDA director. So that is ongoing. But other than that, the DDA is kind of just working as committees. We're going to move on to the fire. Chief, man.
I have a question. What's a DDA?
Downtown Authority, Downtown Development Authority. It's
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's for the downtown area.
Good evening, everyone. We have some special guests tonight, and I'll just read this presentation if you don't mind. And on August 12th, 2021, a heat disk was boiling in a pot of water at the home of Jackson Ward and his family. This is the first time Jackson's hearing his name or knowing what this may be about. So 9-year-old Jackson and his 5-year-old brother Jordan were upstairs playing, and Daisy, the pet dog, was sleeping. The boiling water was unattended and had evaporated from the pot, causing the disc to rupture and smoke to fill the home. The smoke alarm sounded. Daisy started barking and crying. Jackson heard the smoke detectors going off, alertly went downstairs, turned off the stove, yelled for his dad, and got his brother out of the house. When Jackson opened the garage door to yell for his dad, he could see the smoke coming out of the house and without Jackson's quick thinking and reaction, we could have had a much bigger emergency. Jackson utilized his training from Safety Town, visits to the fire station, and all of Mom's quizzing on what he would do in an...
The sheriff, we have Sergeant Fortier with us tonight to give us our report. How you doing, Sergeant?
Very well. How about yourself?
Good.
Hello. For those of you who don't know me, I'm 9/11 Memorial Site at 38 East. Also, if you're unable to attend, then you can also, it'll be available live on YouTube at Michigan Fallen Heroes Memorial Channel.
Great. That's nice.
And that concludes my report.
Okay, Sergeant. Thank you very much
Thank
for letting
you.
us know about that. All right, we're going to move on to the Planning Commission. Patty, anything going on there?
Sure do. In August, we had two Planning Commission meetings. The first one was Monday, August 9th. We held a couple public hearings. We had the Orchard Crossing Plan Development, which is on our agenda for tonight, and that was recommended to the board for approval. We had Magna Outdoor Storage Canopy and the outdoor storage or site plan and special land use. However, Magna wished to remove that actually from the agenda. They just weren't ready yet, but we still, since we advertised the public hearing, we went ahead and had the public hearing, but we didn't have any comments on that. And the Orchards Crossing, I should mention, we had about 8 to 10 people speak at that public hearing. And then we had no older business, but under new business, we had the Hudson Towns site plan, and that's located on Lion Center Drive in Grand River. And that was tabled due to some unfinished items that they needed to clean up on their site plan. And but the Planning Commission was pretty much favorable to that. We also had Crystal Creek South Plan Development and Wind Ridge Plan Development, both minor PD amendments, adding some farmhouse elevations, and both those plan developments were recommended to the Township Board for approval. So that was August 9th, and then on Monday, August 23rd, the only thing on our agenda was the master plan discussion. We talked for, about an hour and a half, Brian?
Yeah.
Or 2 hours? And we went over several sections of the township that we thought needed to be looked at. And we had some really great discussions with Brian and the Planning Commission. And we will continue down that path of discussion. And the Planning Commission, all want to do a little bit of fact finding for themselves. So that was a very good meeting, actually, Brian. Thank you. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Patty. Any questions for Patty? All right, we're going to move on to the ZBA. Lisa, anything?
The ZBA meeting was canceled for August, but we do have, it was rescheduled for September 20th, and there will be 2 variance requests for NLB Corporation, and they deal with signs. It should be another riveting meeting.
All right, thank you. Park Advisory Board, Robert, anything to share about the?
Nothing new to add this month.
Okay. We move on to the water, and with the water, we're still in a situation where we've got all the softening equipment ordered. The COVID situation has put that on a kind of a long-term delivery, but it is moving forward. The 2 million gallon tank is now online, and it's producing great water. So we have lots of water, and everything is going really, really good in the water department. I hope to have a better report, and I believe Ed is going to come next week or next month to give you a report on where the equipment is as far as the water softening. Other than that, I mean, everything has been really good in the water department. Any questions? Okay, and that concludes our reports. And we're going to move on to the unfinished business for the ordinance for the performance standards. And I don't believe anything has changed in the standards, has it, Carol?
No.
I will move the adoption of ordinance 08-21.
I'll support. Sorry. That's okay.
All right, we have a motion and support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll move on to new business. First item in new business is Orchard Crossing Plan Development, preliminary review, P21-11. Brian, do you want to start this out?
I certainly can. Thank you, John. The power changed our display a little bit here, but up for discussion tonight is the preliminary review of the Orchard Crossing Plan Development Proposal, which is at the intersections of Kent Lake, Silver Lake Roads, and Pontiac Trail. We have the site plan up on the screen here. So the project will encompass all of the corners of those intersections. It's about 180 acres. The Township Board last reviewed this at the conceptual phase in May. So since that time, the Planning Commission has held their public hearing on the preliminary plan, and as Patty mentioned, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the project as proposed. So I'm just going to run down a couple elements of the plan, hit on a few of the highlights of our review dated August 25th, but I won't go into a lot of detail on that. And then I'll let you know what the recommendation is per the ordinance. But in summary, there is 121 single-family homes on lots that are sized approximately 70 feet by 135 feet. So that's the portion of the development off of Silver Lake Road. And if you follow the cursor here, it's on the western portion of this development, west or southwest. There are 40 duplex units in 20 structures at the northwest corner of Kent Lake and Silver Lake Roads. There is just under 112 acres of open space, excluding improvements to the orchard property. The seasonal orchard operations will remain intact, similar to the way that they are operated today, although there will be some changes. The cider mill building will be expanded to 12,500 square feet. There will be an outdoor gathering space that the applicants are calling Orchard Square. There will be sheds associated with the orchard, both repurposed existing structures, as well as a new sales building to serve as ticket and U-Pick entrance. There will be an agritainment area, 10 acres for family activities and variety of events. And then the U-Pick operation will be preserved for a significant portion of the current orchard. On the north side of Silver Lake Road, here at the northeast corner of Silver Lake and Kent Lake, is a proposed tasting room with a full-service restaurant serving cider and beer, and an event venue that's 20,000 square feet for accommodation of up to 400 patrons for events in that facility. There's also, at the very corner of Kent Lake and Silver Lake Road, is a bakehouse and farmers market facility, so that would be sales of baked goods, beer and wine, and it would also include a small cafe. So that's the overview of the uses. In terms of the project standards for planned developments, we really only have two major concerns, not even major, quite honestly. The setbacks from Kent Lake Road and Silver Lake Road, the ordinance prescribes 75 feet of setback from the right-of-way. This is the area we're talking about here on the north side of the single-family residential. And then the same 75-foot setback applies to the duplex units along Silver Lake and Kent Lake Roads. Both of those areas on the plan do not comply with the 75-foot setback. However, the township has flexibility with that standard. Things like increased landscape buffers, natural features that force lots to be located as they're proposed are all things that are can play into the township's consideration for allowing a decrease to those setbacks. The Planning Commission discussed some of the landscaping that is proposed, and I'm sure the applicants are going to hit on this during their presentation, but there is approximately twice the required landscape material planted or proposed to be planted as landscape buffer along those lots and along these duplex units. The Planning Commission felt that that was an adequate buffer to meet the standards of the ordinance, and so they recommended waiving that standard. The other item is separation between the buildings. So our ordinance requires 20 feet, the ordinance calls for 30 feet between duplex units, and as proposed, there is 20 feet of separation between those units at the northwest corner. And then similarly for the single-family lots, we require 30 feet of separation. As proposed, there are 7.5 foot side yard setbacks, so we'd be looking at 15 feet between those single-family homes. Again, the Planning Commission was okay with that so long as building code materials were complied with and there was no concern from the fire department on those items. In terms of the agricultural uses, we believe that all of the setbacks can be complied with for both the seasonal and the year-round operations. We've noted in our review in several locations that specific site plans will be reviewed as those plans are further formalized. So the way that this plan development agreement would be set up is similar in nature to how we've had Lion Center and Lion Crossing set up, where we have an overall plan for development, but each individual outlot gets site plan review. That's how we would treat these agritourism uses for both the seasonal and any expansion of or the creation of the event venue and tasting room. Other than that, the other topic of discussion at the Planning Commission and even the Township Board brought this up last time was the concern about overall density. And if you recall, at the concept review, it was unclear whether or not the parallel plan density included the existing orchard operation or if it did not. In reviewing the parallel plan for this proposal here at preliminary, the parallel plan does include all of the acreage that you're looking at on the screen here. And so overall there are up to 165 units available for density, which would meet our future land use plan. And as proposed, there are 161 units. So the concern was, in the future, if the orchard were to not exist any longer, how many more units could be built under the parallel plan? And the answer to that is 4. So anything above and beyond that would require a plan development agreement. We'd come back through the Planning Commission, come back through the Township Board, go through the public hearing process, so on and so forth. Other than those comments, there's nothing in our review letter that is an open major concern. We think that all of the items of the zoning ordinance can be complied with. Again, we would wish that the Township Board comment on those setbacks and separation of buildings. Any other questions or concerns that you have, I'm happy to answer questions, but at this point it seems appropriate for the Township Board to move forward towards final review of this plan development proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Leslie, do you have anything you want to add to that at this time?
I would like to reference our August 10th review letter, and I'll just kind of go through the highlights in our letter. Regarding sheet number 5, the north layout plan, we have verbally been informed that the Event Center Bakehouse will submit a separate site plan package when the applicant is ready to move forward. However, that is not indicated in this preliminary plan submittal. Therefore, we recommend that the final plans either indicate that the Event Center will submit a future site plan, or we list a few items that should be clarified, one or the other. Going down to sheet number 7, the Orchard Operations Plan. The applicant is proposing a gravel parking lot for the Orchard parking lot. We would recommend that this item be discussed and feedback provided to the applicant if that's acceptable. And sheet number 8, road intersections and entrances layout. The road improvement narrative states the developer agrees to assist the township and road commission with road improvements by contributing no less than $150,000. We would recommend that this item be discussed and feedback provided to the applicant tonight on if that is acceptable. And then on sheets 13 through 17, we would recommend that executed off-site easements be required, must be obtained from the affected landowners prior to the approval of the final plan development. And those are the significant items in our letter, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you. Before we bring the applicant up, anybody have any questions for Brian or Leslie?
I have one for Brian. Brian, you mentioned at the end of your remarks that if in the future the orchard was to cease operation, that they would have the ability to come back to pursue 4 additional units because of the parallel plan. I mean, that's only if we don't address that as a part of the development agreement. I mean, my thought is what's approved is approved, and that's what they're comfortable moving forward with. If they wanted to get those 4 units, they would have found a way now, right? I mean, I think you're just saying, you're just kind of laying it all out there, but I think that is the elephant in the room, is it making sure that, and I'm jumping ahead, but that the development agreement is, very open and very clear for all to see now and into the future, that this is not going to turn into homes in 5 years or 10 years. The density has been achieved through their development plan, and that they've decided that this will be, an agribusiness or an agritourism use. So that may change. The owner or operator may change, but those types of uses would have to be, have to exist in perpetuum on that property, or it would be converted to some other maybe passive recreational use that was acceptable, something like that, right? I mean, that's...
Yeah, even converting to a passive recreation, I would say, unless we're spelling out what that is today,
it should
would
still come back
to
correct.
The township. Yeah.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, and it'll all be memorialized in the development agreement, which we don't have in front of us now, but at least we're talking about it now. Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, could we bring up the applicant, please?
Maybe my technical help here first for a second.
Do you have this section so we can keep it like at 20 minutes? Okay, thank you.
Or less.
Thank you.
Yeah, you have a full agenda tonight, and somebody's got a NFL draft tonight, I've been told, so we'll keep it short. Perfect, thank you. What we're passing out is an exact copy of the presentation tonight. We like to do that for a couple reasons. One, maybe helps taking notes, and it's evidence of what we said or what we didn't say, right? Things like that. So, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for allowing us to be here tonight. Orchard Crossing presentation. And for a couple of reasons, we're basically going to show you the same presentation that we showed the Planning Commission. I'd like to say it's because I'm lazy, but it's not. It's mostly because that information we think is important to share with your body, as well as what we shared with them, what the public saw. There's no significant changes. The few updates that are in here, I'll call out and I'll highlight so that you'll see those. But essentially, this is the same presentation that we went through with the Planning Commission on August 9th. So introductions. I'm Greg Windingland with Lombardo Homes. Seen all you folks before. Nice to see you again as well. With me tonight is Anthony Lombardo, Jennifer Thomas, and Jared Keim with Atwell, who is our planner and civil engineering. Behind Anthony is Paul Blake of Blake's Farms. And then our professional team, John Ackerman couldn't be here tonight, so that's why Jared is here. And then Mike Labaday has been our traffic consultant, and Jim Allen does our landscaping and so on. Our agenda, again, John, we'll try to keep it 20 minutes or less. Purpose of tonight's meeting, overview of Orchard Crossing, topics heard during the conceptual presentations, as well as our request to the Township Board, and there you'll see kind of the format of the changes from the Planning Commission agenda. And then, of course, we'll be available to answer any questions or address any concerns that you may have. Your flow chart is actually a really nice one. I wish a lot of communities would copy this because it really makes it a simple process to follow. When we were at the Planning Commission, we were doing steps 6 and 7. Tonight, at the bottom there circled, we're doing step 8, which is the Township Board review. And again, that's very, very nice to have that process in place. Brian kind of already went over this. This is just showing the locations generally of those proximate boundary outlines and so on. Kent Lake, Silver Lake, and Pontiac Trail. So how did we get here? I think it was at the May meeting. Somebody asked Anthony how he came up with the special sauce. It's a lot of research. Anthony is very bright, obviously, but there's a lot of research that goes on as far as reviewing the master plan, the future land use plan for the township, existing surrounding land uses, talking and listening to the prior presentations and understanding what the concerns, what the objections were of not only the township but of the residents in that. And again, overall through this entire thing, we've known that the number one concern for the township and the residents is to ensure that the orchard operation sustains viability or has viability. So that has been a big, big part of our overall mindset through this whole process. And then maintain spirit and intent of the master plan. We want to address as many concerns as are practical to address. Providing reasonable density, which we think we did a very good job of that. Minimize our impact on our neighbors, and then pay our fair share for the traffic improvements. So the open space, the only thing that I'll dwell on here, this is mostly just technical stuff. The biggest thing I'll dwell on is there was a question when we were calculating, when we were talking about the amount of open space. The ordinance requires 20%, and there was a question of if we excluded like the orchard buildings and that. So if you exclude that, it drops out about 6.1% of the open space. So at the very bottom, it is the open space by use, in other words, the orchard and orchard related and the residential, and it breaks that out, and that does not include the 6.1% from the orchard structures and so on. So in the orchard related, we've got about 47, a little more than 47.5% open space. In the residential, we've got a little over 14%, but overall we're still at close to 62% open space for the entire project, which again, the ordinance requires 20%. The density, I mentioned a moment ago that we thought we had a very reasonable approach to the density. Master planned at 1 to 1.25 units per acre. We're just above 1 unit per acre with 121 single-family homes and then the 40 duplex units. Additionally, it meets the criteria in the ordinance for 2 high, 2 moderate, and 1 low areas of consideration to provide increased density, or I guess a density bonus, if you will. We're not asking for any of those increases. We're sticking with that 1.01 and the 161 total units. As Brian talked about earlier, the parallel plan of 165, so we're below that. And Sean and Brian, to your discussion here a minute ago, we're absolutely fine when we do the development agreement to stipulate it's 161 and that's it. We're totally fine with that. The operations, the orchard operations, as we've talked at every step of this, one of the critical things to maintaining the sustainability of it is to allow for a year-round operation. So that's something that we want to be very upfront with and make sure that that's understood, as there will be some form of year-round operation that will be required to ensure that this remains a sustainable business. The other thing that Brian alluded to, or I'm sorry, that Leslie alluded to as far as the other plans coming back for final plans, things like that, I circled the note that was on the other one. All the orchard-related expansion will have to come back for a final plan approval from you folks, as well as whether it's a separate PD, whether it's an amendment to the PD, or however we do that. But we recognize that more than likely the 2 residential components will be following through on this process. The orchard-related stuff may come along parallel with that, or they may lag, or one of the other areas may lag a little bit. But we totally understand that those plans will come back before you if they're not approved as part of kind of this rolling wave that we've got. And again, that was the south area and the north area, same thing. We totally get that they've got to come back for final approval if it's not achieved or attained as we go forward here with the residential. So the residential single family, the 121 home sites, lot sizes were talked about and so on. I had a typo on the last one. At the Planning Commission, we identified those as private streets. They're not. They're proposed to be public. They would be under the jurisdiction of the Road Commission for Oakland County. 2 connections to Silver Lake Road, and then extensive landscaping along Silver Lake Road. As mentioned earlier, we are asking for a reduction in that 75-foot requirement. We think with the extensive landscaping, and it is about twice what would otherwise be required, we think that's a pretty good compromise or offset for that. The single-family residential anticipated sales prices, we put the big asterisk there, right? I used to put a picture of the current president or some foreign leader that was kicking up dust or whatever and saying, you know, it's all subject to this stuff. Now there's so many crazy things going on in the world, I don't know what to put up there, so I'll just say, you know, it's subject to a lot of different things. The duplexes, 40 homes, as I mentioned, there would be 20 buildings. The overall building size is about 65 by 80. Minimum between buildings. There was one question that came up earlier, and it was because we had a couple of dimensions that were unclear on the rear-to-rear relationships. So the minimum is 84 feet between buildings, but with a patio, that could be as little as 60 feet. So the building itself, the structure itself, would be 84 feet. The separate cul-de-sacs, we think we came up with a really good idea to discourage cut-through traffic, and that's to have them 2 separate cul-de-sacs. We think that makes it a very nice feature for that. And then same thing as with the single family, in lieu of the 75-foot setback, we're looking at doing extensive landscaping to mitigate or offset that. Again, the duplex residentials, the anticipated sales prices, we always want to stress duplexes tend to have, similar to apartments, they tend to have a bad connotation that you think duplexes, it's going to be junk vehicles in the front yard and all this other stuff. It's not. These are definitely going to be highly desirable and market rate duplexes. As you can see from the elevations there, these will be very nice homes. Traffic. Proposed methods for traffic mitigation. Since the Planning Commission meeting, we've had another meeting with the Road Commission for Oakland County. We received their verbal okay as far as the geometrics that we're showing for the intersection improvements, as well as all our other improvements like taper lanes, deceleration lanes, things like that. So we've had some continued or ongoing discussions with them and received their verbal conceptual approval of what we're proposing makes sense. So the intersection of Kent Lake and Silver Lake, as everybody knows right now, is a pretty bad intersection. It's currently rated as at a service level of F, which is the lowest that they go in the rating system. So one of the things that we've talked about is committing at least $150,000 towards that intersection improvement. And we understand the township also had pledged some money earlier to do that. Improvements at our proposed entrances, again, those are normal, that would be above and beyond that $150,000. Signalized pedestrian access to cross Silver Lake Road, that's called a HAWK signal. I think it stands for high intensity crosswalk, high intensity activated crosswalk. It's one of those push buttons where when you need to, you go and it stops traffic and that. That's something that at the appropriate time when the Orchard business needs to have that, then that would be installed. That would be required to be installed as well. Traffic is still going to be heavy, right? We don't want to kid anybody. Traffic is still going to be heavy at the times when the Orchard is the busiest, just like it always is. But other times, in the lesser active times with the signalization of the intersection and that, there should be some level of improvement in the area for traffic. Pathways, one of the public benefits is 3 pathway extensions that we're offering to do, that we're proposing to do. One is along the west side of Kent Lake that'll go up to the school. Jennifer's been talking with the school district, and we've got that route that you see there shown in white. They didn't want to cross the parking lot because there was really no safe way for children to cross the parking lot. So we're going to loop it around to the back there, as you can see. The exact location going up along Kent Lake Road, there may be some wetlands or other challenges, so it might meander just a little bit, but generally it'll be a connection from the intersection up to not only just the school property, but it'll actually be right up to the school itself, so children will have the opportunity to go right to the school. The slide or the inset on the far right is on Pontiac Trail, and that's where we would extend the sidewalk down to Topsfield Lane. And then the center one at the bottom is along Kent Lake Road from the intersection going west. There's 2 parcels there that we've looked at it, and we can install a pathway there in the existing 33-foot right-of-way. There was a question at the Planning Commission meeting about a gas main conflict and possibly some other things. We can accommodate that. There will be several utility relocations and things like that that come about as part of the traffic or the intersection improvements. Stormwater management, as we have been very well aware of in our history with the township is very, very cognizant of stormwater issues and drainage issues, especially impacting adjacent properties. So we know that our feet are going to be held to the fire on this, and we expect that too, because that's what we want to have for our customers. Our engineer has worked with Leslie and her team and studied the viable route for it, and you'll see the 3 names there. We're looking to get a small easement across Mrs. Davis's property, and then the Deeks who are here tonight, we've been talking to them about an easement across their property. The Hessels, I've met with them and talked to them. We are very confident that we can come to agreement with all 3 of those parties. We completely understand that we won't get final approval until that is rock solid in the form of easements, and we agree and it makes sense. The other thing is we will be using the most recently revised stormwater standards, so the most stringent stormwater standards that are in place is what we will be following. So the highlights of the Orchard Crossing PD, again, the public benefits, preservation and expansion of the existing orchard-related business, that's really first and foremost. The funding contribution to the intersection, expanded pathways in those 3 areas that I mentioned, stormwater management system designed to the most current and stringent standards. We talked about the density. We think it's reasonable. 1.01 units per acre when the master plan is from 1 to 1.25. It falls below the parallel plan, so we think that's in a good position there. One of the questions or one of the concerns that has come up is, so that's great, you guys are going to get your homes, you're going to build your homes in the next few years, and then what happens when the orchard goes away and they come in here wanting to do more homes? That's kind of the beauty of the PD process. There's a contract that'll be entered between, essentially a contract between the township and the landowner, and that will stipulate what that property can be used for and only what it can be used for. So in the way of future homes, whether somebody wanted to put whatever up there, that would be subject to coming back before not only you guys, but the Planning Commission and so on. And in going through your ordinance, any change that's not deemed minor basically goes back to square one, and it goes through that entire 12-step process. So there can't be a bait and switch, if you will, or any other type of thing where we get our homes and a few years later, whether it's us or somebody else comes back and go, hey, guess what, we want to build more homes. Unless for whatever reason you guys were agreeable to that, that can't happen. And the PD agreement obviously is recorded and runs with the land. Our request of the board is approval of preliminary plan, subject to any conditions that may come up tonight. And then also, and I think Brian cleared this up at the last meeting, the rezoning kind of isn't really a separate matter. It kind of runs parallel with everything, if I'm understanding that right. But there is the rezoning of the property from its current zoning to the PD. Some of the comments and concerns that we had at, and I got a typo there, it's the August 9th meeting. A couple questions came up. Who will maintain the stormwater basins and the open space areas? The respective associations will be doing that. There will be a homeowners association for each of the 2 residential areas, and the association would be responsible to maintain their stormwater basins as well as all their landscaping and open space area. Will there be one association? No, there will be 2, and again, one for each of the homeowner associations. The Duplexes association will be responsible for their roofs, for their driveway snow shoveling, for their lawn mowing, all those types of things, where the single family everybody will be responsible for all their own stuff, so it's really needs to be two separate associations. And then there was a question how trash would be collected in the duplex area. I'm not sure if the concern was whether there would be big commercial dumpsters out there, something that won't. Everybody will have their own roller cart, similar to what you have in a single-family community, where on trash day you roll it out to the curb and that. And we also include language in our master deed that allows the association to engage one trash company, similar to the single waste hauler program in a single-family area. So there will just be one trash hauler in that community for trash recycling and so on. John, I don't know how we did on time.
You did pretty well.
Okay.
You did pretty well.
And if there's anything any of us can address, we'd certainly be glad to do so.
Okay, well, thank you for that presentation. That was a nice, put-together presentation, and now I'm going to open it up to the board to ask questions. So, anyone like to start?
I have many questions for you.
Go ahead.
Okay.
So I do have a question regarding the bakehouse and farmer's market. And I do recall it being mentioned that something about if it changes ownership at some point. So I guess my concern is, what would, if this PD is approved, what is to prevent that commercial use, essentially, from turning into a CVS or a 7-Eleven? So I don't want to have a flashback to some other previous situations.
Mr. Dolan?
Go ahead.
Do you want me to respond as the questions, or would you like me to wait, or?
No, as a matter of fact,
I feel like it would be
yeah,
better
I'd like
for
you
you
to
just
respond as they ask, if you can.
Okay. Carol can certainly correct me, but the PD agreement is going to say it's going to be a bakehouse, this size, this location, this many square feet, this many bathrooms, and whatever else. And for it to be a CVS or a Marathon gas station or whatever else would have to come back through this body for a revision to that PD plan and the PD agreement.
And in looking at the language, does it specifically outline that it is a farmer's market bakehouse associated with the existing orchard? I mean, I can't.
So,
is that what the language said?
Yeah. So right now there has not been a PD agreement provided. We had spoke to Carol a couple months ago, and you had indicated at the time we would do that, and that time we think is after this because we don't essentially know all the stuff to put into it.
Right.
But I assume all those details will be nailed down in a combination of the plan itself as well as the PD agreement, and the final plan will have that information on it.
Okay, because I feel like it would be important if everybody's thinking this is going to be a farmer's market,
Yep.
and then all of a sudden it switches to something else, that
Yep.
it's not really running with that whole feel of the orchard. And then you had mentioned about year-round operations. I don't know if this would be for you to answer or perhaps somebody from the Blake's family. What would some of those possible year-round operations be? What is an anticipated use in the spring versus what would an anticipated use be for the winter? Obviously the fall, I understand.
Okay, I'll let Paul address
Thank
that. Can I, just before he does though, going back to the ownership, you said the previous discussion about if it changed ownership or whatever, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but as the PD agreement goes, it's going to be recorded against the property, so regardless of who owns it in the future, they're still bound by that same agreement.
Right, okay.
You want to repeat your question again, please?
I have to take my glasses off again. What would some of the year-round operations be that you would anticipate? Obviously, we know what would happen in the fall, but what types
Well,
of...
that's a great question.
I know.
We've had to adapt in Armada to ensure that we could employ full-time people to get the talent that we need to run an operation like that. So it's a little bit of a moving target, and I realize this PD is going to pin us down a little bit. And we're going to be a little bit broad when we go through that PD process, but you know, for instance, last year we introduced a skating rink in Armada.
Right, okay.
It gave us a new season, if you will. We introduced Easter egg hunts.
Okay, so would it be probably mimicking what you would have in Armada area?
Yes, but please understand, business like agri-entertainment, orchard business, cider mill, a little bit constantly changing to be relevant. And we don't want to take that ability to be relevant away from this operation. I think the public would want that.
Right.
And we found that very necessary in Armada.
I would not, by the way, expect that you would list anything in a PD agreement. I was just curious what were some of the
Sure.
some of the possible opportunities.
Sure.
And then many of the last questions, thank you, by the way, many of my last questions deal with sidewalks, big surprise. Yes, thank you. Could you explain to me the rationale for not having a sidewalk or pathway on Kent Lake Road on the east side, considering the development to the north, the Turtles, whatever Turtles thing it is, will have sidewalks? And then with that, I understand there was a discussion regarding the sidewalk that is not going to go in front of Kent Lake Elementary, but I think my biggest hope is that this could get us a connection to the bike path that we have through Island Lake that goes into Kensington, and we're continuing to have a bottleneck. We just can't seem to get there. And then the last question regarding sidewalks, what is at this mysterious dead-end sidewalk that's in the duplex area? Like, is there a picnic table there, or a...
Is it shown on that screen, or is it a different screen?
It's not on that screen.
That's the pathway to the detention basin.
Oh.
It's a maintenance.
It's a main.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
it was a pathway.
Nope, there you go, okay.
All right, then.
There's one in the single family one too.
Got it, thank you. So, I guess that one is, that question is gone now, but can we possibly revisit a sidewalk that goes in front of Kent Lake Elementary to just get us that much further to that connection of the Island Lake State Recreation Area, that pathway? And then again, also the possibility of a path on Kent Lake on the east.
Okay.
Yes, on the east side.
Here's a really solid answer.
You don't know yet,
Maybe.
do you?
Maybe. Let me explain. So if we could look at kind of the terrain that's there in that, as long as there's no significant challenges, it makes sense and we can do that. I'm concerned because we haven't looked at it if there might be some significant challenges to constructing it that might be over the top or something.
Right.
Going to the sidewalk was really our concern, or going to the school was really our concern, was to get the students to the school.
Right.
Even if we went across the school property, there's still going to be a segment that's going to be incomplete to get you up to the corner there at Grand River.
Yeah. So at this time, that's the sidewalk questions, and actually my very last question is, there are two significant portions of the project that are outside of the orchard usage that are in the northwest corner of the duplex area, and then in the, essentially behind the event center. And would you be willing to consider putting those into conservation easements? Because that event center is not really all fleshed out as far as plans. Both of those areas are part of our priority 3 potential natural areas that we have identified. And so it's, being that that's pretty much the last thing of your plan, would you be willing to consider that wooded area, that wetland area, to be placed in a conservation easement?
Is that one of the areas we're talking about
Yes.
right there? Okay.
Yes.
So probably, but maybe it might not be the best vehicle to do that.
Okay.
Because if it's in a conservation easement, it's got to be deeded to somebody.
Okay.
If you deed that to Eagle or the state or something like that, if for whatever reason some purpose would come along that you guys wanted to use that for trails or who knows what, it's nearly impossible to undo it at the state level.
Right.
If you grant the conservation easement to the township, you're basically doing the same thing with the PD agreement, because that area in the PD agreement is untouched.
Okay.
So doing a conservation easement may or may not work, but it might not be necessary, because in the PD agreement itself, you're essentially creating the conservation easement because nothing else can go there unless you guys say so in the future.
Okay. I'm just uneasy of, seeing the event venue that maybe if there's a wedding, that pretty soon weddings, somebody's going to want to have a gazebo in the middle of the woods, and then it's just going to start eating into that that location.
And again, with or without the conservation easement, with the PD agreement, wouldn't be able to happen unless you guys said, okay.
Okay. All right, those are my questions. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Chris, any questions you have?
Sure. Yeah, I guess it kind of echoes what Lisa was just talking about. When you had met with our neighborhood early on, it was discussed of putting the orchard, or at least the non-building portions of the orchard, within a conservation easement. And what you just described as a conservation easement deeded to the state of Michigan or Eagle or whomever is right on with what we were thinking. I absolutely understand that we could do it through the PD process and that, stays within the township, but that can also be amended. It can also be started over as you and Brian had described, and this is particularly what happened with the Ring Road area, where it was all laid out in a PD, and then it came back, and they went through the whole 12-step process to completely change the use and build something else. And that's the biggest fear for not only myself, but my neighbors, as well as, the secret sauce, which was referenced by one of our planning commissioners who works for Bill, that you guys figured something out. And so, obviously, we're honestly suspicious of this whole thing, because with 4 votes on this board, we could have another 161 homes if the orchard operations doesn't come to fruition. And I know Blake's is here. They were here in past proposals that have come up on this property. They're not on any of the paperwork. They're not an applicant. We haven't seen any type of property transfer or anything at this point. So, again, I'm uncomfortable moving forward until we have something a little stronger than just the PD agreement as far as this. That being said, the plan itself, some of the talking points that both Brian and Leslie had mentioned about, the setbacks, the 75 foot from the right of way, I'm okay with that, with the additional landscaping. The 30 feet between the homes is being proposed as 15. I wish it were 20, but, again, if things, work out with, a conservation easement and whatnot, and getting this locked down, that's, I think that's worth it. And I guess the extended pathways and sidewalks, I like what you've done connecting the gaps, and actually you did more than I expected in terms of getting it to Kent Lake Elementary and actually bringing it out and around. And while yes, it'd be great to continue north, you've done a lot in terms of off-site pathway extensions. And I guess if this were to move forward, I would like to make sure those are part of the phase 1, or all built with the residential development. Because as this is presented to us, you've got a lot of cool things presented, but they're all associated with the orchard operations. Mm-hmm. And I can see a situation where you guys get in and you build your 161 units and you're gone, and we're kind of left with, well, that's great, but all this cool stuff like the tasting room, the the event center, the bakery, all that stuff that I'm more personally excited about. I don't really need more homes, but this kind of stuff is what I more or less want to see. So,
right.
And that's kind of where I'm sitting.
Okay. Can I just address the conservation easement concern? And Carol, I don't mean to put you on the spot. I don't know if the PD agreement could have something about, let's just call it a conservation easement in the PD agreement, that maybe takes a supermajority to change, so that concern of just 4 out of 7 can change it. I'm just thinking out loud. Maybe it's crazy.
It can be the PD can be drafted in a way that calls it out to be a conservation easement without, turning it over to the state or something like that, where you've still got control over it. but it's just the language and how you write it. I mean, this is the required open space for this plan, if you're approving it. And we can just write the language that it's meant to be conserved, you know, preserved in its natural state in perpetuity.
Correct. And I guess this one's unique because that open space is actually an active, you know, agricultural operation.
Yep.
So it's not like, you know, typically when we see these residential-only PDs, you have the open space and people who live in that area can, you know, meander and walk through it. I don't believe that, I mean, that's not going to be the case here because it's going to be an active agricultural area. So
Right.
Trying to balance that out,
Yeah.
too.
Okay.
I mean, I think if you're dealing with this section that's above the future plans for that building, I think that's easy to write that into the PD with respect to what's going to happen during the orchard, for the orchard operations. That's a matter of just describing it, and as discussed, it would be either used that way or left vacant, or at the most 4 homes. That's what the PD agreement's going to provide.
And we're even fine stipulating that it's not 4 more homes, that it's 161's the number for the whole thing.
Okay? Works for me.
Very good, Chris.
Answers my questions, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Robert, you want
Sure. So a lot of my notes have also already been addressed. I guess picking back up on more sidewalk things, is the costs of things around the intersection, like the extension across the 2 private residences, the mid-block crossing with the hawk signalization, is that separate, like in addition to the $150,000 minimum for the intersection improvements?
That's correct. The 150 for the intersection improvements is solely for the intersection.
Okay. On the note of the school sidewalk,
Yes.
I guess I share the thought about trying to eventually get to the trail. I understand we can't expect you to get all the way there, but I guess if when you do go back to the school about this, if for whatever reason they really don't want something going straight across the frontage, if we could just kind of make clear that if they would be okay with just understanding that where the sidewalk goes, when we get to building that next leg, that we'd want to tie in on the other side, and the understanding that people would be potentially traversing right along the front of their building.
Okay.
Let's see. For the east side of Kent Lake Road sidewalk, if for whatever reason it's determined that that's not feasible to build right now, I guess if we could, after that first option, if we could look at just making sure that there's enough space either in the road right of way or dedicating an easement.
Makes sense.
For future building.
Okay.
I think that covers all the sidewalk stuff. The conservation easement situation, honestly, I'm kind of torn which way to go, because I do have, like Chris was saying, we don't want it to be too easy to change, but at the same time, I have seen other situations where conservation easements are almost too difficult if something drastic does happen or need to happen, like in a scenario where, I mean, I don't know how long the ground is even, viable to continue to grow things if in, 200 years, it's just not doable to have an orchard. I wouldn't want us to be stuck with just totally, derelict area. So I don't know, I kind of like your idea of the supermajority, if that could somehow be written in where it's more than 4 out of 7 to approve certain changes. I don't know if that's doable, but just a thought there. Last point, I guess, goes to traffic issues. I was kind of hoping for a potential of a roundabout there. I understand there's definitely more costs there, and it's ultimately up to the road commission, but I was just curious if you had explored that possibility, and not sure if, I don't know what the real net, I know it would still be more expensive, but I'm imagining that if you were to have a roundabout, you wouldn't need quite the distance on the taper lanes and the left turn lanes, and once you subtract that linear footage, I guess I'm just curious if it was estimated out to see how much more it really would be. And if not, and if there is no possibility right now of actually doing that, if you could look at the possibility of a quick check with the county on what the geometrics would be for that, and possibly shift the bakehouse a little bit and dedicate an additional right-of-way to where in the future, if we do want to build a roundabout there, we would have that option without requiring crazy changes.
You want to speak to that?
Sorry, I have to read this.
No, no.
So,
Good.
Leslie and Jared and I also had a meeting with the road commission about this particular intersection. They have two schematic geometric designs already laid out for this intersection. One is a roundabout, one is a signalized intersection. Since we would be starting this as a developer prior to the road commission coming in, whatever we end up working out and submitting with them would ultimately be kind of what they're working towards with us. So we're working together with CES, Oakland County, and ourselves to put this together with a traffic engineer. From your questions on the roundabout cost versus a signalized intersection, it's a drastic different cost. Roundabout is way up here, and the signalized is down here. For this particular intersection, the road commission has done the studies. A roundabout and a signal will accommodate things better or equal. With the hawk signal that's going to go in, the signalized intersection is a preferred route to go due to pedestrians, because with a roundabout, you can't put the hawk signal in and then expect the traffic to be able to know to stop at the roundabout. So once we talked through that with the road commission, the signalized intersection was kind of the preferred route that we're pursuing at this time. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, no, that's good information. Thank you.
You good, Ron?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Doug?
Thank you. So over the years, we've seen a handful of plans for this property. Mr. Irwin's owned the property for a long time, and we've already talked. I mean, he has a right to sell his house or his property like any of us would, and it was just a matter of time before the next iteration came back to us. And I've been here for most of the proposed plans over all these years, and this is light years ahead of any of these other plans that were unimaginative, and they were just cramming down hundreds of houses on the township, on the neighbors, on the road network, and not listening to the township board, to the planning commission, or to the residents about the project, what they wanted to see, how it would impact them. So this is the first time someone's shown up with a plan that was really thoughtful, I think, so I appreciate that. And while it's not perfect yet, hopefully we can get there. I think the density is a big thing. We talk all the time about the master plan. We talk about building, to the master plan, be consistent with the master plan. And, it's been said multiple times here tonight, they're leaving 4 lots on the table. And while that doesn't sound like much, nobody leaves lots on the table, not 1 lot, let alone 4. So I think that's worth mentioning. It is consistent with the master plan, and, that's what we talk about all the time. It's been said, the setbacks, I don't have much of an issue with the setbacks as long as the fire department and the building department are okay with it, and it's built to a standard that will make it safe. The smaller the lots, the more open space you get. So if you can get 120 houses on 60 acres instead of 80 acres, that's just 20 more acres that everybody else has the ability to enjoy. So if that's the way someone wants to live on a 70-foot lot, then they'll buy a house here. If they want to live on an acre, they're not going to buy a house here. So that sort of takes care of that. Mr. Blake, it's good to see you. Your name has come up so many times, and I don't want to say you're doomed to fail, because certainly you're not, but there's all this talk about what happens if in 5 years or if in 10 years. So I'm happy that you're here tonight, because nobody thinks that you're going to fail in 5 years or 10 years. So I hope you're not taking that way. It's just part of the discussion, part of the what if kind of scenarios that we run through when we're talking about projects like this. So I've heard nothing but good things about your operation. So
you've asked great questions, because it's real. That's why there aren't that many orchards or cider mills around.
Well, and I appreciate your desire to be flexible, because you're right. I mean, the public's going to want you to be able to be flexible to provide them with the opportunities that they see, and just down the street maybe from their house instead of in Armada. And Armada is a great place, but it's not very close to where we're at right now. I had a question about your timing. So we've talked a lot, and I think in your proposal, Greg, there's 2023 home construction is kind of what you're projecting. You know, I guess my question to Mr. Blake, if this progresses and while we're focused maybe more specifically on the homes and the layouts of the homes, what's your timing? I mean, it seems like you're in. I mean, you're here tonight. And
Well, we're here. That Irwins are still operating it. Obviously, the friends.
yeah, I got donuts and cider on Sunday.
Yeah.
Bill was actually picking up trash. I was impressed. He
does everything.
Yeah, he does.
But I get help. Yeah, he's struggling to get help, and there is a big project. We need to get through the PUD or the orchard part of it with you people, and then probably toward next year. I believe the Irwins are going to run it next year, and after that, there's an opportunity for us to come in at the end of next season and hopefully creatively make some improvements and move forward.
And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I mean, you're in. I mean, some of the questions or concerns maybe in the back of our minds are you know, you're in this. Your name is on it, maybe not legally as Chris brought up, but you know, you're here, you're talking to us, and that's a good sign. But you know, nobody does business deals on handshakes and you know anymore. But I mean, you're committed to this. You want to move forward.
Am I committed by signing a piece of paper yet? No. Okay. We're very interested. We know there's some concessions that we need to make this a viable apple orchard business. And that's what we've done our best to identify with working with a great team like Vargas.
Sure. Do you have questions? So I'm putting you on the spot, but do you have questions for us? I mean, are there things that that haven't been said tonight that are on your mind that you say, well, if they don't allow this or they make me do that, that are going to tilt? I mean, because I think, you know, it might be helpful to flesh this out. We're still early on in the process. So I'll come back to you, but I have a couple more things. Kent Lake, yeah, I think the school district's right. If you're going to bring kids to school, and I'm very familiar with the school, crossing that driveway is a real bad idea. Not to say that another pathway couldn't go north, but as far as your main goal of getting people and students to the building, that is exactly where they would enter the building if dropped off in the morning. And so keeping them as far away from that kind of traffic, you know, is really a great idea. And the sergeant would agree with me, I'm sure, because they're down there on a regular basis, especially in the morning. Road and intersection timing. I mean, it would be great to get all this work going well ahead of all the construction that's going to happen. It's a level of service F. It's been that way for years. Greg, you said it. It's been on our list of things to do for 3 years, I think you had said to me. So we've been talking about it. We've been working with the Road Commission, and I don't think any of us want to wait. So you're talking about 2023. I would like to see that intersection done in 2022. So that way it can be, you know, functional. And I guess two-part question. In your traffic study, and I don't know, you probably read it somewhere, but what is the projected level of service once the intersection improvements are made? It won't be an F, and it may not be an A.
I want to say C, but I don't know. I want to say C, but I don't know. We can find out.
That answer is a D, buddy.
Yeah.
No. So C, level of service C.
No, I think it's somewhere in the C. I don't know off the top of my head.
So three-part question. Will the roundabout and will the signalized intersection yield the same level of service?
Yes.
So to me, the pedestrian comment was one that we were talking about while you were going on, is that if you're going to have some interconnectivity for pedestrians, then a roundabout is obviously great for moving traffic, but if your goal is to also move pedestrians through this area, it is not great. Right. It's dangerous, and it's not going to be a good thing. You were going to say something, sorry.
Two things. I've known you well enough to tease you just a little bit.
You can.
That guy right there actually does do stuff on a handshake, which is one of the joys of working with him and the culture and the integrity that he has. So sure. I do have to tease you just a little bit about that.
Sure.
As far as the commitment, and tell me if he gives me a bad sign, as far as the commitment for the funds, we will commit the funds as early as they are needed in this overall process. So if there's the ability to have those improvements happen in 2022, we'll commit to providing those funds at the appropriate time whenever those improvements can happen.
Okay,
Still-
and there's a whole different discussion about designing and permitting and
Yep.
everything that needs to be had offline, but that's something I think, I don't want to speak for all of us, but it's overdue. The improvements at that intersection are overdue. I like the supermajority idea because it addresses perhaps some of your concerns. You know, and frankly, I had similar concerns, but the conservation easement point that you make does make sense. If something does need to change, something very minor, the state of Michigan is not known for, you know, being a great conversationalist and being user, like pick the phone up and just we'll get this done. Right. So it would be better to leave it in the hands of the supermajority of this group, which represents, you know, this community. So I'd be okay with that. I think that's all I have at this point. So thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Michelle, you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I was looking at Leslie's letter, and she had on sheet number 7 proposing a gravel parking lot for the orchard. And I was just curious, we had talked about it earlier, and you guys had really thought it was still going to be gravel there. So do you plan on at least paving the entranceways on all 3 spots? And then how will you handle, I guess, marking the parking? It's usually such a disaster there that sometimes like people will park 3 and 4 deep and then you're stuck.
Yeah, the approach is anything that's within the road right away, the road commission is going to require that to be a hard surface, whether it's concrete or asphalt, whatever, they're going to require that to be a hard surface.
Okay.
Anything around, for example, the event venue, wherever there's ADA spaces, things like that, we're sure that's going to need to be a paved area.
Okay.
The rest of it, though, for 2 reasons. One, obviously, there's an extensive cost to paving it.
Right.
The other thing is that all becomes impervious surface, which then, you know, all the current regulations, the upcoming regulations talk about infiltration and trying not just to capture the stormwater and convey it off-site. So by having some level of gravel,
Okay.
it allows for some on-site soaking into the ground.
Okay. I think everybody else kind of covered everything else.
Michelle, can I piggyback on one of your questions then?
Mm-hmm.
Is the parking at the event center, you said that at one point was, you had mentioned it's overflow parking. Is that going to be gravel as well?
The majority of it would be, yes.
At the event center as well as the orchard side?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Pat, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just have a few things. You know, this is my 4th time seeing this, so I'm pretty familiar with it. But I think what does kind of bother me is if people, this has been the Irwins family farm for a very long time, and they've been very successful. If we don't do what I think we need to do to get the Blakes to come here, I think it would be really sad, because who's going to take over this orchard? I mean, that's what our public has told us over and over again. I'm not saying, you know, give them anything they want, but I think there should be I just had a customer or a taxpayer come in today to pay their taxes, and he asked Melanie, can I talk to somebody about what's going on in the orchard? And so she came and got me, and I was happy to take the plan out and explain it to him. And he lives on Milford Road in Mill River, and he said, I can't believe you guys are getting the Blakes. He goes, you know, have you been out there in Armada? And I said, I have. And he said, wow, just to have it this close to our house. Because they have to, remember, Irwins have owned this a long time. So they inherited their property from family to family. Blakes have to purchase this property, and they still have to keep it within so that they can claim their homestead, or it'll be too expensive for them. So I'm very excited about the opportunity to work with the Blakes and try to get them to come here, or they are coming here. I just think that's really important, because what will we do if we don't have an orchard operator? That's not something you just, I mean, we don't know anything about trimming trees. I mean, way back in the day, we got a ton of calls from homeowners that wanted to buy the orchard, but they're not orchard operators. You know, I don't know anything about operating orchard. You need a business that's established so they can be successful. And that's why I think the Blakes, it's so appealing. And so I just wanted to say that. And then everything else I've already spoke to, or you guys all already mentioned, but I would be okay with the super majority also, but not just a straight out conservation. You can't get a hold of those people. You can't even ask to walk, have a path through it. And plus you're making that property unusable if anything did happen down the road. I don't want to do that on my conscience. I just, they're a landowner, I get it, they run an orchard, but you're right, what happens if it's 50 years from now? I won't be here, but I don't want to, I mean, what happens if something happens? What happens if they want to build something there? That wouldn't be up to us, that would be up to a future board to make that decision. And I think they should have the right to do that, that's just my opinion. So, that's all I have to say.
Okay, well, this is the greatest part about going last. I have the smartest board in the world. I mean, look at these questions, and they came up with a lot of great questions. And the one thing that Sean had come up with about the Blakes that I'm a little concerned about is that deal doesn't seem like it's actually been made. So I guess my concern is if that deal doesn't get made, are we, I mean, what do we end up with? I mean, that's what I'd like to know.
Good evening, everybody.
You shook his hand before you came in, so we're all set, is that right?
Yeah. No, so the situation we have, I do believe I'll make a deal with the Blakes, and I can express some of their little concerns about what, as they move forward and how they improve the site, what their concerns will be from the township's perspective. But the Irwins and Emerys will continue to, if the Blakes do not close, they'll continue to operate the orchard as they do today. Okay. So backup plan is they will own it, and they will, so that backup plan's in place. Concerns of Paul Blake and Marty Blake that are here maybe are like they want to improve the cider mill, right? The cider mill's, I don't know how old it is, but it's very old. They want to expand that cider mill to accommodate what their real needs are for the current operations. But they don't want to necessarily pave all their approaches or build detention, so they want to do a stepping stone where they can increase their sales volume, and then as they increase their sales volume, increase their improvements as they go through it. So things like that you got to take into consideration. It's a stepping stone. It's one step at a time. And I would suggest on the current operation that he's able to improve the buildings, increase the cider mill a little bit to accommodate what they really need, and then when they go to the big major improvements, then you start talking about the hawk signal, the paved approaches and the right-of-way. Those are things they'll be looking for. Just cooperation with you while they build their business, build their income to support that, spending that type of income. Okay. Is that a good? Well said. Well said. So that's the things they'll be looking for. We haven't flushed them all out yet. That's one of them they mentioned tonight, but we will. We'll flush those out before we come back to the Planning Commission and Board for the final step, and then it'll all be in the PUD.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. I'm not sure Mr. Irwin appreciated saying he was going to keep running it. I said, I'm not sure you like the idea of keeping on running it, but...
I'll be 90 over there by the time.
So one thing I did want to say to this team, this is really looking forward. I mean, I think that we've been on this board for several years, as Sean has mentioned, Patty, Michelle, and all of us, and been through a lot of projects, and they've brought a lot of different things that was hundreds and hundreds of homes, and it was just a mass homes. You would tear the orchard out. Some of them came back with a little bit of orchard left, and none of it was very appealing. And I think the one thing that you guys have heard is that we want the orchard. I mean, we really would like to keep the orchard and to have that destination for the township. It has been for years. And we all have fell in love with the Irwin orchards. I mean, we all go there. We all get the cider, the donuts. But I think this is a really, really forward-looking concept. And I think it's going to be I think it's going to be wonderful for everyone. I'm not really sure how anyone can say that you didn't kind of cross all the bridges that we asked for.
We tried to do
And
this exactly.
I know you did, and I appreciate all the questions this board asked, and I hope you take them in consideration. You know, about the easements and the conservatories and all that. I hope you listen to that and try to do the best you can. And other than that, I think it's a great project. And we'll see what happens here going forward. But thank you for the presentation. And I would like to, I offered the audience to come on up, and they can talk if they'd like. Does anyone want to come up and comment on the project?
I'm a talker, I will always speak.
We got to keep it to 2
Anybody
minutes.
John, while she's coming up, I just want to say really quickly, because it came up and I didn't mention.
Go ahead.
It. I think that leaving it, and come on up, I'm just going to talk until you get to the podium and I'm going to
Okay.
be quiet. But other than the approaches and the barrier-free spaces that are required, I don't object to having a gravel parking lot as it currently sits out there. I think there's kind of something nice
Still
about that.
rural.
Right.
Yeah,
So
me too.
Okay.
I hadn't weighed in on that and I wanted you to know.
Same.
Come on, you can come on up. Thank you for your patience and waiting.
Oh, no problem, it was really interesting. The last I heard of studies,
They do the
It's their
approvals.
roads.
and then, so will you guys wait till the road improvement studies have been finalized before you decide, okay, it's a go?
That all gets taken care of as the process goes forward. Yeah, but they determine.
What is that? That's like kind of a general, what does that
They
mean?
determine what their road takes. I mean, they're going to
Okay.
tell us what'll work. If it's a light that'll work the same as a roundabout, we're going to put that hawk signal in, and they were talking about when the traffic.
And the hawk
doesn't
signal is
stop.
to let people cross?
Yes.
How about a bridge
Well, that's just.
or something? I mean,
It's probably
the people in the orchards who want to say, okay, let's go to the bakery farmer's market. They've parked at Irwin's and they're going to push a button to walk across to get to the bakery. Is that the
It
plan?
happens everywhere. Yeah, that's how they go cross traffic in most busy areas. They do it that way. Yep.
Okay, and also, what happens when the Blakes decide to retire?
Well,
Will they be selling it to another orchard?
But we
Well,
can't,
we
we
can't
can't,
do
we
that.
can't speculate on things like that.
I know,
We have
but-
to look at what's in front of us.
So those were my questions.
Okay.
I
Well, thank you.
just, like I said, 400 people in an event center, and the duplexes and the single-family homes and the Turtle Creek, and
Yep, we get it.
I don't even want to head east anymore and go into Lyon Township or South Lyon. If I have,
We get it. We
if the
understand.
road won't work. I mean, a traffic signal, it's so bad now, I can't imagine all this extra traffic.
Okay. Well,
Just
we-
very concerning, so,
Thank you for coming up and voicing. We
Okay.
appreciate it.
John, if I wanted to make a comment. I think, Mr. Lombardo, you had mentioned about making small incremental improvements. Didn't we do that with Cook's Automotive? Like way back when they came to the planning commission, we didn't make them pave things right away. We did things incrementally. So I was really pleased to hear that part, that you were gonna kind of take that. Sean, you were on with me, weren't you?
Yeah, and I think the difference is it's not a greenfield. They're reusing an existing site. So I mean, this will continue to be, it is a site and will continue to be, and I think that's where we have maybe some latitude. It already functions the way it sits.
Right.
And so maybe just bringing on, and I don't remember exactly how.
But I remember we did have that in consideration, that they would never have been able to begin the business at Cook's Automotive if they had to make all those improvements right from the beginning. So I know we,
It might have had to do with like actually improving the existing, like they were allowed to
Right.
open as it stood and then operate for a while before they
Right.
did some of the other things to expand their business. They had to make site improvements, so there were,
Right.
it was maybe tiered. That was
but
a while
I
ago, know.
liked that, approach. So, and I know that we had that similar situation with at least one other business. And I was also looking at your website about your Armada activities, and I mean, the lavender idea, you could bring lavender to Lyon.
Okay, well,
John, I have one other question
Go ahead.
for Lombardo, and it's actually quite important. I'm sorry I missed it earlier, but in past proposals with the any type of orchard development, there's been concerns about the soils. Obviously, on the end where you're building all the homes and regrading everything, there's typically about 6 inches to 12
I don't know if
inches
we
of
need it.
soil that would have arsenic just from it's an apple orchard, apple seeds. What I guess is what I'd like to see if this moves forward is the mitigation plan on that. Typically, what I've seen in the past is the first foot of soil taken off site and disposed of at, Arbor Hills landfill or someplace like that. Again, all the homes in that area are on private wells. So that is obviously a concern, not just through land balancing and infiltrating, but also through wind as well. So if you're able to address that.
Okay, if you can flip, it's about the 6th or 7th page. It's the orchard operations south of Silver Lake Road. If you flip, it's this lower one here. You see that?
Yes.
That's showing a proposed berm. The intent is to remove the upper level of soil from the proposed residential area and create a berm there. We've talked to geotechnical engineers, and we'll work with Leslie and her group to ensure that that's an acceptable method and that it follows, the appropriate procedures and things like that. But that would be how we would address dealing with that.
So the soils are going to stay on site. They're going to stay on site. They're going to be moved from the residential areas of the development of the property into the farm area, because the farm already has that concern about the soil. So I'll stay within the farm preservation area. It'll be placed based on environmental consultants. It'll be capped with clay and recapped with topsoil. So it'll stay on site, will not be taken off, and that's how we'll address that issue. And then the berm will be replanted with some type of something. So it never leaves the site. But it's outside the residential area. Then the residential area can be certified by my environmentalist that it's clean. It meets residential criteria based on EGLE or DEQ, and we're all set.
I would appreciate seeing that at the next.
It'll be part of it. It has to be part of it to make all the economics work for everybody. So it's well thought out, well addressed, will not be a problem.
You good, Chris?
And then I had one last thought on the conservation easements too, because of the, I know we're at kind of an impasse on the board, whether it's to the state, whether it's to the township. And it just occurred to me is perhaps we put like a 20-year time cap on it or something, if that is something that this board has concern going forward of. If it's something that's permanent, maybe we set a time limit and say, like we've done with other types of agreements with developers, is, I don't know, just trying to throw it out there as a compromise.
May I just address that?
Sure.
The only thing, and again, I'm not on the board, I'm just from an outsider thinking, there may be unintended consequences. There may be something that happens in 10 years where the orchard isn't viable for whatever reason. And who knows in today's world what that might be. There may be a use that comes before you guys that you go, you know what, this is great, we want to do it. And whether it's at the state level or at your level, if you put a 20-year moratorium or whatever, there's the potential for some unintended consequences of doing something such as that.
And for clarity, I'm not talking the entire orchard operations. I'm talking, like, for instance, if it is like the, bakery or, cider tasting area, whatever it is, that those uses would not be within that, because I don't want to prohibit a change in ownership or change in use on the, the physical buildings or the parking lots or anything like that. It's more or less like the areas that, Lisa described that are more or less outside the general commercial-based portion of the agritourism.
Okay. All right, any other questions? Any other questions out of the audience? Everything good? All right, well, a motion would be in order if anyone feels.
I'll move the preliminary approval of AP 21-11, subject to all the review comments as well as the discussion tonight. I know some of our discussion was vague, but I'd like to be able to reference that as we move ahead. Obviously, if between now and final site plan approval there are questions, I would encourage you not to wait till the end, because there are a lot of, I think, important pieces here and maybe moving parts, so I'd rather have another meeting at least to get clarification on something that you wish to do rather than try to end load it. So that'll be my motion.
Is that good? Okay.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to move this preliminary forward. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, I'm opposed. Chris? Okay, thank you. All right,
Thank you very much. We truly appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, we're going to move on to Crystal Creek South Plan Development, minor PD amendments. This is to add some elevations. You want to go ahead, Brian, and just kind of explain yourself?
Thank you, John. My comments are essentially the same for both of these proposals this evening. As we understand it, the market has kind of shifted in terms of architectural elevations and things that the Lombardo Company is looking to do in their developments. So you've presented with some elevations this evening. We have no ordinance concerns with what's proposed. This is strictly a architectural preference in terms of the board's decision this evening, but we'll incorporate language limiting the elevations to just the farmhouse style in terms of an add-on to what is existing in the PD today. So the current language is a little bit different between Crystal Creek. It says brick, stone, and masonry materials shall make up a minimum of 50% of the front elevation. So with the farmhouse elevation, obviously that percentage will go down. But in both cases, we would still expect brick or stone to be placed up to 3 feet, 3 feet from grade at the bottom, at the base of these elevations. So that's what you're looking at this evening. Both of these are considered minor amendments to the PD. So the Planning Commission has recommended approval for both Crystal Creek South and for Windridge.
Okay, well, we got Crystal Creek South at this time. Anyone have any questions for Brian? These are pretty simple.
I'll move the approval of AP 21-32.
I'll support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll move the approval of AP 21-33.
I'll support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Brian, can I ask you a quick question? When you do these minor PD amendments, do you typically do a first amendment to the PD agreement and record it, or do you just put this with the file?
We have typically put this with the file because it's a minor. If we were doing a more significant, that would be when we would record it with the county.
Okay. We're going to move on to the consideration of the request for child care facility for Mill River outlot parcel. Brian, you want to go ahead and know?
Thank you, John. And I've got to say, Mr. Shonchek, is that how you pronounce your last name? Okay, is here this evening. I told him to show up between 8 and 8:30, so I was a little delayed, but thank you for showing up. The request this evening is the consideration of increasing the allowable square footage devoted to child care centers as part of the Mill River development. So right next to Red Apple Daycare is a vacant lot to the south. That Red Apple facility took up 8,130 square feet of the allowable 20,000 square feet that are prescribed in the consent judgment. What that means is that under the consent judgment, there is 11,870 square feet remaining. However, that consent judgment also allows the township board to consider a request for minor modifications to that square footage total. It's called the density of any use permitted in the judgment, is the specific language from the consent judgment. But the applicants are looking to increase that number to for a total of 3,400 square feet above the allowable 20,000 square feet. I have a couple comments in a review letter specific to that request. The first, in terms of site layout, this is still, what you're considering this evening is not the specific site plan for this use. That would still have to go to Planning Commission for all of the landscape standards and setback standards, but you have been presented with a concept layout showing that this could feasibly happen, and we think that that site plan looks reasonable. It looks like it can comply with ordinance standards. Maybe some minor modifications that need to occur at the Planning Commission level, but it definitely seems seems doable from the layout perspective. Obviously, we expect the fire department to comment on the layout and accessibility to service the building, and all the other elements will be addressed at that point. Based on the additional square footage, we'd expect 7 to 10 spaces above and beyond what is required under the consent judgment today, the 11,000 and change. That, of course, is going to be dependent on the number of employees. We have a standard that's based on square footage plus employees at max shift. So, again, that would be confirmed at site plan. The outdoor play area could potentially be a little bit larger than is allowed today. However, our ordinance standard for outdoor play areas is based on the number of children outside at any given time. So again, we'll confirm that at site plan. And then of importance as well is the separation from housing in adjacent lots. We don't think that the additional square footage would impact those adjacent lots in any meaningful capacity. Again, all of the setbacks will stay the same as they are regardless of size. The distances from the existing buildings, and then all of the landscape buffers will still be intact as well. So based on those criteria and review of the request, we don't have any objections to allowing the facility sized up to 15,270 square feet. Of course, I'm happy to take any questions that the township board might have, but no concerns from a zoning ordinance standpoint.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Any questions for Brian on this adjustment?
Just one, Brian. Just for clarification, this isn't the library parcel. This is the one south of the southern entrance to Mill River.
Right, the Red Apple's already there.
Red
We want
Apple's
to expand.
between them.
Isn't it?
But
gonna
it's south of Red Apple.
It's on the same segment as Red Apple between the two entrances.
Okay.
Between the two
Correct.
entrances,
Right.
but it's north of the southern entrance.
North of the southern
Okay.
entrance, yes.
Sorry. I guess.
Who do we have here for this? This is, I guess, are you guys representing Red Apple or LPRS?
Red Apple is not part of this deal.
Or sorry,
We can
I'm
bring
sorry,
the
I
applicant
misspoke,
up if you
but-
have any questions for Brian. Do that now, Robert.
Oh, okay, sorry. I
We'll
thought
bring
we
the
were-
applicant up. This is just for
Right,
Brian at
never
this
mind.
time.
I will wait then.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions for Brian? All right, you want to come on up?
Sure.
This is the applicant.
Good evening.
Good
My
evening.
name's Kevin Shonchek. I'm with LPRS Corp. Brian, thanks for the presentation.
Okay.
Any questions?
So-
Hopefully I can answer for you.
Yeah, so basically, we can go ahead and ask questions to the applicant. Go ahead, Robert.
All right, so this is just something that I was curious about reading through. I was looking at the history of the site and the various iterations on the consent judgment.
Sure.
And I was looking at what we're looking at here, the 3,400 increase represents about 17% increase in square footage over the 20,000 that was originally written.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I was just curious to ask if LPRS would be amenable to considering getting this to possibly modifying another piece of the agreement. That piece being, as back to what Chris was mentioning, in the first amendment to the consent judgment, there's a provision that stipulates that on the township parcel, anything that we are to build will result in essentially a 16% fee in addition to the cost going to LPRS court. And I guess since you're essentially getting more density out of this, which is potentially increasing the value of what you can develop on this piece and in this use area, I guess I'm just wondering what the possibility is of some sort of reduction in that amount.
Well,
And I
you
know
want me
that's
to go? Okay.
yeah.
So my apologies. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
I was not a part of that original negotiation. As I understand it, I think that fee is for the construction management of that project. So, and I can't, I was not ready for that kind of a question, but I appreciate your
Sorry.
negotiation skills for sure. I'm not prepared to discuss that. I'm not the president of that corporation, so I'm only here for this one purpose. But certainly, if you want to talk about that in the future, I think, there would be a floor for that, a time for that, for sure.
I guess, how time sensitive is the current deal in the sense that, could we wait and see if they're amenable to that before we move forward with this piece, or is it?
The buyer of the land is actually here tonight, Jennifer Moss. She is she'll be the operator, so we're under contract to sell the land. I've got to amend this consent judgment so I can sell the land to her so that she can get the building that she needs to be a successful operator. So I guess time is of the essence. I think right now, she would like to break ground, get through this process, get through site plan approval, engineering and all that, and then break ground hopefully in the spring. So, I don't know how much time that gives us to look at other things.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't know where to go from here with that, but I just wanted to raise that as a
Sure.
possibility.
Okay. Is that all you got, Robert? You okay?
Yeah.
Anyone else have some questions?
Well,
No.
I just have a question. You had said that she's interested in breaking ground in the spring. How much, I don't know, Leslie or Brian, if this were to be delayed by a month, how much would that really affect her groundbreaking timeline, would you estimate?
Well, I guess there's a couple of ways to look at it. An applicant always has the right to work on their plans and develop their site plans. It's at their risk because they wouldn't have that feedback from the board. So if they took that risk, you wouldn't lose any time. If they wanted to wait to have this decision, they would lose a month. So that's what you're looking at.
But does that, I guess I was just thinking with winter, being right smack in the middle, does that?
I think it's feasible to break ground in spring probably either way, whether it's action at September or October, if that's what.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
I think Robert brings up a very fair question that I'm intrigued by the answer.
So I came in here thinking, I'm not voting for this. We got into a lawsuit before. I was probably in college still when this happened, so I don't harbor ill will, but this was an agreement that resolved a lawsuit between the township and a landowner. So now for the landowner to come back and say to the township, well, give us something, when we ask people to give us things, I can tell you how it generally goes. When there's no consideration, it's not well. Robert brings up a good question, and I'm not going to vote on this personally until we get an answer to that. The other thing I wondered is, can you tell me if anyone has talked to the homeowners association? Because there are quite a number of homeowners that would back up to this, and I would like to know maybe how the HOA feels about us giving an additional 3,400 square feet and additional 7 to 10 parking spaces and a play area that's now going to be larger and possibly more impactful right behind their homes than they had ever anticipated when they bought, if they did the research and had the consent judgment in front of them. So I think we need to have that information before before I can move ahead with it.
Okay.
Not to say that we couldn't sit here in a month and still have all this information and move ahead, being
Sure.
sensitive to the timetable, and the applicant didn't have anything to do with this lawsuit either, so it's not, they're just sort of in the middle right now.
Understood.
Or the purchaser, I should say, yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Anyone else have any questions or want to talk about it? I personally have no problem with it. I mean, I think that you could go ahead and move forward with this, and I think that, it's really totally in your ball court to figure out the consent judgment, how you're going to work with that percentage, and,
I guess that's an additional question is, what were you looking for in terms of the actual form of a decision from us? Are you looking to have a 10th Amendment to the consent judgment?
That's correct, yeah.
Because I guess part of me says I think we would want to see the language too before a final approval on something, but that's just me.
It would just be a simple amendment of that paragraph to increase the square footage.
Okay, I guess if it was something that simple, then I.
Well, and possibly.
And we can draft that.
Possibly
But
address
right,
the fee to the township that Robert mentioned as well, as a part of this.
Well, I think that it brings up a good point that, that Sean brought up too, when we have when we find ourselves in these positions, like Sean said, when we ask, it's a hard no, when, there's really not a whole lot of give and take, and so how much more profitable is that piece of property for you with a larger building being allowed? What is the difference, 3,000 square feet or 3,500?
Well, I can tell you, the sale of the property would not be more profitable for us. It was always, it started out as 4.92 acres as a total, is one piece of property. And then we split that in half because Red Apple was looking at a smaller building. So we split that in half and built them 8,120 square feet. So we kept the other 2.46 acres, understanding that it can only be a daycare. And Jennifer and I talked about the size of the building. This is probably all you can get, but there's a chance you could get an amendment to the consent judgment. We've done 8 others in the past without any kind of give or take. It's pretty. The way the consent judgment is written, it seems like it should be a fairly easy process, but so there was no talk of extra money for extra square footage. It's just a need for the use. So you're looking at you've cut the property in half. You've got some significant setbacks on the property, so it kind of eats up the available building size. Trying to maximize it a little bit because things have changed. Obviously with COVID and infant care, you need a little bit more square footage. So it's really for their business use. It's not for us.
Well, if it sat for another month, is that going to hurt you? I mean, could you get that language together to bring it back to the board here and let them read that? I mean, is that something you could do if we table this tonight?
So what language would that be? I think what Robert's talking about is negotiating a reduced fee, and you haven't proposed a fee.
I guess if you want to continue that discussion now, I got the feeling you weren't prepared to even have that discussion right now.
Well, I can certainly take something back to the partners if you had a proposal in mind.
I mean,
So what are you looking for?
So in the current scenario, whatever we end up potentially building on that parcel to the north, the way that I'm reading the First Amendment,
Yep.
we have to use LPRS to build, and they get cost plus 16%. When we were having the discussions with the library, it seemed as though the 16% we were viewing as a barrier to doing really anything with that site in the near future. And so what I'm looking for is a reduction of that cost plus percentage. I don't think it's fair to you or reasonable to say get rid of it entirely. I don't know exactly what that number should be. I'd be happy to hear anybody else's thoughts on that. But
So by listening to what he's saying, he's absolutely, it's factual. It is factual. If we were to build something on there, you would get 16% premium.
I don't have that language.
I can
No, but it
send
is
it
in there.
to you.
Does it say 16% for
It's
just
do you want me to
a
read
straight
that?
fee, or is
do you want
that?
me to read the paragraph?
Yeah,
Would
please.
that help? Okay. Let's see. The township agrees to accept and acknowledge the charitable donation of the parcel described in Exhibit J, provided, however, the owners or its authorized designee shall have the exclusive right for the original construction of the township library, community and/or senior center, recreation center, or other public community building, consistent with the aforementioned uses set forth in paragraph 2, I think that's a 7, little Roman numerals, of the February 11th, 2004 consent judgment on the donated parcel on a cost-plus basis at a rate of 16%. Further, that any development of the donated parcel as determined by the township be consistent with and shall not be detrimental to the overall development and layout of the site plan set forth as revised in Exhibit B through N.
Okay, so what would the township like to see that number be?
I don't know, Leslie, can you maybe
zero.
help me?
Well,
Yeah.
obviously. I can't go
Right.
back at 0.
I mean,
I guess I could.
you asked, so.
And I
Yeah.
appreciate your honesty.
That's
But,
true.
you know, there's, you know, to build a building takes a lot of work, so.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm
Nobody's gonna do
not
it for
super
zero.
familiar with what's typical. I mean, Leslie, can you help me out here or somebody else?
I think basically the agreement was, if anything was built on the property, you guys would build it.
That's right.
Or if we chose to build it, you would get a premium off the cost of our build of 16%.
That's not how I read it.
I
I read
don't-
it as they
That's
have
basically
to
the way
be
I read it.
given the right to.
We had an option to build, I thought.
Is
So
the-
I don't recall that, but it's been a long time since I've read it.
I mean, I don't know if Carol's
Okay.
reviewed this recently, but from my reading, the original agreement, we had a
It was only
certain
that.
period of time that we could do it if we wanted to do it, but then the First Amendment change totally replaced the entire section on the library parcel
Right.
with this saying that they have the exclusive right to build.
The township parcel. not
Yes,
the
sorry,
library.
it's
On the
referred to
township
here
parcel.
as the library
Well,
parcel.
it's
Right.
In the
referred to a lot
original
of things.
CJ.
Yes.
So I guess that's where we're at the crossroads
So-
of, you know.
Well, I'm not a general contractor, so I would be giving you my opinion when it's really not my expertise. I mean, typically, what I understand in the industry is typically general contractors, their markup, I guess, if you will, is usually between 8 and 10%. That's what I've been told, but again, I have never worked for a general contractor directly. I'm not one. So it might
Okay.
take some more offline conversations and research too.
I mean, would you be comfortable with taking that actual number ask, something, I mean, unless someone wants to
No.
actually propose a number, I mean, actually, I don't know if we can really do that outside of it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if, I mean, I guess my thought would be is if you let them know that we want to see that number reduced, and then, you know, possibly see what your group says and propose something back to us. I mean, you're the one coming to us asking for this amendment to give you some relief or flexibility, so I would say we'll kick it back to you and say, give us a number.
Right. So, and I understand that, but like I said before, I was not prepared to get into a discussion
Sure.
about
No,
this, and that was never
totally
a
understand.
trigger in the past for any of the other amendments.
I understand that. As I was looking through the other changes that have been made, most
Sure.
of them were in architectural stylings or swapping
Sure.
one use of a similar density for another, and
Right.
ownership transfers. Whereas this seems more of a substantial change to
I
me.
would
To
agree.
where,
Right, and I would agree if it were one building and it was still one parcel, but now that it's been split and we're kind of restricted based on the consent judgment to just daycares, right? So it's a little bit tougher for us to give Jennifer what she needs, or actually, we're not even necessarily building it for her. We're just selling her the land at this point. So, you know, it just makes things a little bit more difficult for the end user, not necessarily for me. From us, from a sales standpoint, sure, but this is more user-driven, for sure.
Okay.
Well, I mean, and obviously, if she decides she doesn't need this conversation's
That's right.
done with and you move ahead, but, right.
Yeah,
I mean, she's stuck in the middle, but we're just trying to work.
Certainly, understood, yeah, I get it.
I guess, can I ask, Jennifer, is 1 month going to totally derail your plans?
Yes.
Is that, okay?
You want me to come up there or
Yeah,
stay here?
please come on.
Okay.
Please state your name and for the record, please, and your address.
My address to Jennifer Moss, 547 West Main Street, Northville, Michigan, 48167. So as I'm sitting over here, the month, I don't care about the month necessarily, but what I see is you negotiate with him, guess what's going to happen to me? He's going to negotiate with me. So I'm like over there going, oh, Lord, you know. He's only here because I made him come, or, you know, because I'm like, I need this building to be a certain size. And he's like, okay, you know. So to me, it's like I'm kind of being, you know, but I get it. So the month, I would, you know, of course, everyone has to work with each other. I just want you to take that into consideration. And I do a lot of contracting, and I'm really surprised to hear that you're saying 8 to 10%, because that has not been my experience. So I just want to say that also for the record.
And just so you know, at least as far as my comments are concerned, there's you guys and there's us, but then there are those neighbors next door, and I don't know that they've been consulted at all. And this is the day-to-day impact of any operation, yours or anyone else's, is going to have more of a possible problematic or detrimental effect to them than any of us. And I'm not
So going to ask you how that could, I mean, they already know it's going to be a child care center. Yes, it's a little bit bigger, but I have 7 other centers, so I'm not really sure how much more it would impact them. Of course,
Sure.
we could ask them.
Well, I mean, it's 7 to 10 parking spaces, it's 3,400 square feet, it's however many kids that equals on a per square foot basis. So whatever that is, if it's one more kid, someone could say, well, this is worse than I thought it was going to be, or have an objection to it. But, I think Robert mentioned it's like a 17% increase. So that's 17% more kids. Is it 10% more kids? Is it 25% more kids? That's,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we're not ignoring that party, which is the handful of homeowners that are going to be behind you, because now there's a bigger play area. Is that going to cause them to be, closer to their property line? We're getting way ahead in the process, but what kind of screening and separation are we going to have? I mean, there's all those things that I'm thinking about too.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a planning commission.
Right, but and I agree, John, but that just weighs into this conversation to some extent.
So I don't want to cut off if anybody else wants to say anything, but I guess if we're ready, I'll put something out here.
Well, I guess we have to talk, first of all, what is it that you want? What is it that you would like them to come back with?
Right, that's what that's what I'm saying, is if you want me to, I was going to make a motion to table with a request in it, I guess, if that makes sense to go forward, or do you want me to just keep talking first?
Table's a table, isn't it, or can he go ahead and put
You can go ahead and do that.
Okay. Go ahead.
Give a reason why it's tabling it.
Right. Okay, so I would make a motion to table the consideration of the request for the expansion of the square footage of childcare facilities in the Mill River development while we await, for Sean, I'll throw in the input of the HOA if we can solicit if they have any concerns, and requesting a response from LPRS Corp on their willingness to reduce the cost plus royalty in do you need me to reference the exact location, or?
I don't think so.
Okay, in the First Amendment to the consent judgment.
I'll support that.
This is one
Is that
month
sufficient?
table?
Yes.
One month.
I believe, unless someone wants to propose a different
There's no more
timeline.
discussion after we table it.
Well, I have a question for the motion.
Well, once we vote on it, but, right, we can.
Table it, call the question. I'll support, right?
Yeah, it was supported.
That's over. We can't talk about it anymore. So, all those in favor for the table, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. All right, we're gonna move on. We got a bunch of table. Okay, we're gonna move on.
All right,
Show it to you.
Yep.
Go ahead.
So it's the annual tax rates that have been presented to us from Oakland County with the Headley Amendment, which is another reduction because of our increase in taxable value. So again, these rates are what is allowable, and we will bring back the public hearing when we bring when the actual budget comes, but I need these rates, and they need to get to Oakland County by September 15th. So I just need an approval of these rates. And again, the hearing for the budget, these rates will support that. So these are the rates that are gonna go for our 2022 budget.
I'll make a motion to approve the rates for 2020. For 2022, sorry, tax rate, I apologize. 2022.
I'll support.
All right, we have a motion and support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
All right, thank you.
All right. Now we're
My
gonna
brain
establish a
said it.
tentative rule. You want to take that one?
What is this one?
It's a special law that you do.
Yep, me too.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yep. This is the notice of the public hearing for, or we're going to set it, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We're going to set the notice for the public hearing for the tentative special assessment rule for the general purposes, which is delinquent water, sewer, mowing, and anything else in between.
Couple quick things. First, normally we do this like in October, I think, so I think you're a little bit ahead this year.
We are trying to be really ahead. We weren't ahead enough.
No, and I think that's good. The other thing I noticed in going through these, there are a lot fewer people.
Because we're ahead.
Because it's a partial year.
It's a partial year. And we're
Oh, because we don't have, because the bills, the water bill's not due for another 2 weeks.
Because we can only go back, they have to be 6 months delinquent at the time that you do this.
Okay.
And so this 1 year, we have kind of a partial year. Next year, you'll see what you're used to seeing.
It'll come to you in August, which is what it should have done this time, but we missed it again.
Okay.
So Carol's trying to move us
So
in the right direction.
That all makes sense. All right. Thank you.
Yep. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine.
I'll make a motion.
If you'd like me to.
Sure.
I'll make a motion I'll make a motion approving the tentative special assessment rule for general purposes resolution number 2021-19.
Support.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the next 4 items are all ordinances that we're trying to fix up. And again, I told you we were going to bring these to you, off and on as Mark goes after these things and he figures out ambiguities in them or they double talk, he tries to strike them things, and that's what these are all about. And if you notice, most of the things are striking out paragraphs, okay? It's just making it easy for him to enforce them. So if you look down, the first one is the fireworks, the additional provisions of the township code of ordinances, new subparagraph to provide penalties for violations. That would be the first one. And I hope everyone's had an opportunity to kind of look at what we're proposing.
Yeah, and if I can just add to this, these
Go
were
ahead.
ordinances that came up during our discussion and admin, where Mark had been going through and found holes or things that needed to be corrected, and this is an area where he's received complaints from residents that people are shooting off fireworks and it's all going into their yards, so it's meant to address that.
Yes, please. Yeah, go ahead, come on up.
My name is Reginald Neisel. I live at 57347 Windmill Point, and I just wanted to speak in support of this change to this ordinance. Every year, my neighbor has a fireworks display, and this past year, my house was absolutely bombarded. Windows were hit, the sides of the house were hit, my deck was hit, and I collected some of these projectiles that were burned out. Another neighbor said that he saw embers on my roof, which of course I didn't see, but because I couldn't see the top of my roof. So I went to the fire department the next day, and I spoke with one of the firemen, and he said there was absolutely nothing that the fire department could do because there was no ordinance. So I just want to urge you to support this change.
Thank you. And our zoning officer is really good about going out and finding language that he can't.
Yeah. I've spoken with Mr. Snyder repeatedly, yes.
And a lot of this has come up between him and Carol, so we're trying to really make it so we can enforce it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay, any questions about this ordinance change? This is the first reading for all of these, so everyone agrees. Motion to be in order.
Make a motion to move ordinance 09-21 to second reading.
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, great. We're going to move on to the buildings and building regulations. This is another one that needs changes, penalties, and for the violations. I mean, that's what we're changing basically, so we can enforce them.
Basically, the next 2 ordinances really go together. We're amending the noxious weeds to bring that more up to date and delete things that should not have been in there, and added some exemptions for it. And then the one that's before you right now is simply paring that down to refer to the changes we're making in the noxious weed ordinance and making them consistent.
Yep. Carol's been working hard on these, so go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to move amendment to ordinance number 10-21 to second reading.
Okay.
Support?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and we'll move on to the noxious weeds, tall grass, same type of thing.
Sorry.
I was just gonna make
I-
another motion, kind of power through this, but if you have a question.
I can follow up with, I don't, is this more of a Brian or Carol thing?
It depends, what's the
Okay.
question?
Just some of the wording pieces, I had some things, but more generally on this, the two of these together, the old one had 10 inches, the new one has 6 inches.
We've reduced it to 6 inches.
And I guess I was looking around at some other communities, and 6 inches was the absolute lowest I saw. There were ones as high as 12.
Mhm.
So I kind of wonder if, is 6 a little too aggressive? Should we go to like 8 or something?
If you live next door.
6 inches is long. If
Okay.
you, like you said, if you're living next door and looking at it, so.
Fair.
Well, when you know it's 6 and you notify them and then they don't cut it and you finally get out there and cut it, then it's 12.
10, yeah.
Valid,
15.
valid point as well. The other piece was that I noticed when looking at other communities was that they referenced for their definition of noxious weeds, they referenced the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. I guess they declared a list.
We
and-
took it out of the statute,
Oh,
of
okay.
the state statute,
Okay.
with what we use, so.
All right then.
Good with that?
Yep.
Well, then I will make a motion to move the amendment to ordinance number 11-21 to second reading.
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and our last one is the ordinance to change for delinquent charges, uses, other costs due, liens, tax rolls, assessed, exceptions where leases provide deposit, delinquencies, transfer to the tax roll.
This is just the one we just
Yeah,
did.
this is the one where we're getting you on track, and we made the one change to be consistent with the statute, so.
Okay.
I'll
Make
make
a
a
motion.
motion, oh,
Go ahead. No,
I thought it was my turn.
No, go ahead, your turn.
Sorry.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 12-21 to second reading.
Okay.
I'll support.
And a motion and support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, moving on to the closed session.
I'll make a motion that at 9:13 PM we move into a closed session to discuss pending litigation, Huron Valley Outfitters LLC versus Charter Township of Lyon, Oakland County Circuit Court Case Number 20-179677-CK, in accordance with the Open Meetings Act, MCL 15.268E, as an open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the position of the township.
I'll support.
All right, we have a motion and support. Kelly, could you please call this by roll?
Yes, Michelle Cash,
Yes.
Sean O'Neill,
Yes.
Lisa Blades,
Yes.
Christopher Enlow,
Yes.
John Dolan,
Yes.
Patricia Carconi,
Yes.
Robert Swain.
Yes.
All right, we will move into closed session. Support.
All right.
All right, please call us by roll.
Lisa Blades?
Yes.
Chris Enlow?
Yes.
John Dolan?
Yes.
Patty Carconi?
Yes.
Robert Swing?
Yes.
Michelle Cash, yes. Sean O'Neill?
Yes.
Okay. I think that concludes the regular business of the township agenda. So I would like to make the motion to adjourn. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
By the way, are we off? By the way, we adjourn?
Yes, we are adjourned, yes. 9:53.
Cost plus, 18.